Hey, Gator fans, I am here with Chris Leak, the MVP of the 2006 National Championship game. My quarterback, because that's when I was with the Gators. And Chris, I tell people all the time, prettiest ball that I can remember. I don't care who came after you. Nobody threw a ball quite as pretty as yours. Although I will tell you, I think Lagway is getting close. His ball is beautiful, but yours, you hold the cake right now. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, that's kind of always been like my staple. It's tough not to when you started throwing the ball when you were 6 years old. So I kind of had that coming for a long time, and I was throwing balls on college campuses back that young. When I couldn't even participate in camps. So I started at a very young age, and obviously it helped me pretty much perfect it as I went on and played college.
Yes. And, your freshman year, you come in because of an injury to an older starter and, kind of take over the show starting at Kentucky. And you saw a lot of turmoil, during the time at UF, the transition from Zook to Meyer. And I think that, some of the things that you experienced, obviously my husband Eric played with you during that time. There's some parallels to things that are going on now, you know.
Yep.
The coaching change that you guys went through from Zook to Meyer. Talk to me a little bit about your experience and, some of the hardest parts of that transition.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a commitment from, and thankfully we had a group of guys that where we were growing together anyway. From that '03 class, so we had a really good recruiting class that pretty much stuck together all the way through. We didn't have many guys transfer out, and that was a big step because I think that our '06 year we had like 20 something seniors that whether they were redshirt or true seniors, like we had a nucleus of guys that kind of kept that through that transition. That kept that team together, and we were able to make the transition from one coach to the other, and that's how we kind of excelled because we all bought in. We made the sacrifices that we needed to make to better for the team. So it takes definitely a big nucleus of guys. With the way the transfer portal is today, I think it's much more difficult because there's so much turnover. So it goes back to obviously how you recruit and those things as a coach to try to keep. You gotta have at least I think 13 to 15 guys that kind of stay in your program to kind of right the ship when things, especially like kind of where we are now, in the situation we are being 1-2, we're going on the road, and that nucleus of guys now has to kind of step up. So to me, it's interesting to see where they go from now because I'm always a person I like to see when what a team does when things aren't going well, and because that really reveals kind of who you are. So.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the transfer portal, and that is a whole new angle to all of this, right? You can jump ship, with
Mhm.
essentially no repercussion at the end of the season. And NIL is something that's going to play a role in, who sticks around and who doesn't, because, you can lock in some guys, but it's not like other places aren't paying too, right? And so how does that factor into how this all works?
Well, I'll tell you what, like, just, from all the things I've, listened to, people I know that, are the deal in the NIL, a school, I would say FBS school like UF, you need somewhere between 23 million dollars for NIL for all your sports. And football will take close to 14 to 16 million of that. Then you got basketball is probably going to take somewhere around four. Baseball probably takes somewhere around 2 to 3, and then it kind of filters out throughout the other sports. So you have to have an NIL budget now in the for us the UAA. You have to have an NIL budget in your school system that can go out and get players because it's essentially like free agency, especially when time comes. So.
Let's talk a little bit about this season. You told me right before we jumped on that you've spent a little bit of time around the program, the quarterbacks this spring. What are your thoughts on, Coach Napier and the direction the season's heading right now? I'll get right back to chatting with Chris, but I did want to let you guys know about something brand new. Several of you have asked how you can support. And I've got something for you. I just launched a Patreon page and I am excited to share it with you guys. We've had memberships on YouTube for a while, but I think this is going to be a much better way for us to connect. I'm excited to get over there and share some insight with you guys and what's going on with Coach Napier, coaching changes, recruiting, and more. It's sort of going to be like a peek behind the curtain when it comes to Gator football. If you'd like to check it out or support, the link is in my description. It's patreon.com/Allie Peak. Go check it out, and thanks for the support.
Well, obviously, it's not the season us Gator fans want. It doesn't. It definitely doesn't feel good. But I think this road game to Mississippi State's coming at a good time. I do think this team needs to kind of get away from Gainesville to kind of circle the wagons, rally the troops, and because right now all the noise right now they're hearing all the noise and all the distractions can get that way. So I think going away, being on the road is a way to help a team come together. I know it helped us back in 2003 when things were going. So we lost to Ole Miss at home against Eli Manning, and you could hear the noise coming. And I can't remember if we had a bye week or the next week we played LSU, and we won at LSU, right, which was a huge game for us.
And number one team in the country.
Right. Yes, and obviously that was a Nick Saban led team, and they ended up going to win the national title that year. But that game, going on the road, having to circle the wagons, that really brought the team together. So it's really at times in adversity that I like to watch teams, and I think it'll be interesting. There is a path for this Gator team to be 3-2, going with a lot of confidence going into Tennessee. I mean, there is a path to that. Now, a lot of things have to change, I think. From a mindset perspective, obviously effort level, mental errors, those things have to. I think playing a more exciting brand of football for me, which is throwing the football. I think we have to throw the football to go out and put some points on the board, win games. So at least if we do come out short, it's a 30 to 32 game, right? I think fans will start to come around and see the progress if that happens. So. So it's, there's things that I think need to change, but there is a path to 3-2 before Tennessee. I see.
So you said that there are things that need to change. Is there something specific that you're seeing on the offensive side of the ball that you think Florida is missing? Something you can point to that if you say, "Hey, if you fix XYZ, it would improve the offense overall."
Well, I think I look at it really simple as an offense. You have to have an identity, and the first way to identify yourself is to identify who your quarterback is, and so you have to make a decision one way or the other. There's an old saying: if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. So I've always believed in having one quarterback that the team can rally behind. The backup is ready to go, and it happens. The backups play at some point in time now in today's game of football, so the backup has to be ready more than they did back when I played. So I think settling on a quarterback, whoever you decide that is, I think Graham Mertz should be your starter right now. I think he gives us the best chance to win and to play with consistency on offense to where guys can rally behind. And his leadership and what he's shown this offseason, I think this is the time where that leadership kicks in. And so I'm excited to kind of see what that room looks like moving forward. But I'm a big believer in pick a guy, rally around him, and let's go. Let's go play. Let's go do what we do. Play our best ball. Let's play an exciting thing of football. Graham definitely has enough arm strength and all the arm talent that you would need as a quarterback. He's proven last year that he can make good decisions in hostile environments and third and longs, third and shorts, and those type of situations. So I think you kind of let them guys and go out and go play, kind of a sense of letting the chains go for a lot of these guys.
It's such an interesting conversation to have with you because obviously your senior year, they ran a little bit of a two quarterback system. You were the starter, you were the guy, but Tim was brought in as kind of a change of pace. And it was successful, right? We won a national championship that year. Do you think that something more similar to that system than what we're doing could work? Or do you think that Mertz and Lagway's skill set kind of overlaps too much for that to be successful?
Yeah. I think it was completely different with me and Tim because our yes, we didn't really because I'm obviously more of a passing guy. Tim was more of a running guy at the time, especially when Tim was coming around learning the offense.
Sure.
And that's the other thing about DJ. You want him to get in the game, which I think what Urban did with Tim. You want him to get into game in positive situations, not when you're backed up in towards your own end zone. You want them to get in the game where so they can have a lot of success because as you saw what that did for Tim's confidence in the next seasons, right? So it's really about the future for the young guy, and the older guys can really handle those pressure situations, those third and longs that we're going to get into eventually in the games, which is something that I've been watching. That if we convert more on our third downs, like it's a different ball game in all those games. So I think that takes a veteran leadership and a veteran quarterback who's been in those situations. And I've been in those situations as a freshman,
Yeah.
right, on the road, and it's not those things aren't easy. Those things take time to get used to having to manage. And so I think for DJ, yeah, I think there could be some packages in there for him. But I think you'd have to, as a coach, you have to make a decision on who your guy is, what your offensive identity is, so your guys can rally behind that and move forward.
So last week we saw them alternate series. And talk about how hard that is to get into a rhythm as a quarterback when
Mhm.
you are switching off every other time.
Oh, I mean, it's very difficult because there's a ebb and flow. There's a flow of every football game, right? There's momentum shifts, and as a quarterback, you want to, as they say, let the game come to you to some extent, and you're always feeling out where the game is. And that kind of helps you to understand, okay, what is expected of you, and when you're being pulled in and out a lot, and we saw that a lot in Coach Spurrier's years. He's talked about that on a couple of shows. It's tough. It's really tough for a quarterback to get into a rhythm, and especially with a guy I think like Graham and like DJ, you need those guys to be in consistently so that they can start seeing all the defensive looks. They can see things happening. Like on all the different situations when you get into the red zone, when you're in the open field. So, because the defense changes as you drive the ball downfield. And if you're constantly being taken out and taken in, it's really difficult to get into a rhythm and to kind of trust what you see on the field.
So if you were to, and obviously I know you're not a fan of it, but if you were to stick with a two quarterback system, in your mind, does it make more sense to commit who's going to do what before the game starts? Or would you adjust based on how the game is actually playing out, who gets what series and, who plays when?
Yeah, I think the best way to go to is I think the best play calling coaches, and we had one in Steve Spurrier, Mike Leach, the late Mike Leach. I think he was one of the greatest play callers. Every time I've spoken to them, like they're really great at observing the game and observing the flow of the game. And like some people say, like you go to the guy with a hot hand, or you kind of just go. Your play calling and everything is based on the game. A lot of coaches, what I'm not a fan of, they look at their play sheet and they call, okay, I've called this play and I call the next play. Like I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of I like a coach that reads the game, reads the field, sees what's going on, and calls everything based off what the current situation is. A coach that's kind of more in the present moment. And I think that's what you saw with a coach like Steve Spurrier, right? He was kind of an in the moment guy. You would see some of his play call sheets. They said they would just be like scribbles, and they'd be like last second adjustments, right? So I think the game of football deals a lot with emotions and adjustments, and you have to make those adjustments a lot of times in the moment. You have to kind of read the field, see what's going on the field, and I think that is something that we can improve on as with this coaching staff and with our offensive play calling.
Earlier in this interview, when we talked about things that could be improved, one of the things that you said was effort. And I think I've talked to a lot of guys that played on that '06 team, and they've all mentioned that same word, effort. And so where does that stem from? Is that something that the players need to be accountable for? Is that something that the coaches need to draw out of the players? Like, where do you flip that switch to just overall increase effort across the board?
Well, I think it's a collection of both. I think your senior leadership plays the biggest part in it. I can tell you, I mean, you probably noticed from speaking with Eric, that one of the biggest changes from our 2005 season to our 2006 season was the difference leadership and accountability that was taken in the off season, really away from the field, away from the lights. And that is done in locker room, that is done in practice, away from prying eyes, right? So you do those things. Those are things that really fans don't see. They're just the results happen on the field in the game. And so the senior leadership that we have this year, that I think that's why everybody was so hopeful for, that right now has to kick in. And like I said, I think it's really, really good that we're going on the road where you're almost forced to circle the wagons right now.
Mhm.
And to me, it really will reveal what the leadership is on this team moving forward. And I think if we get a win, it will help the confidence is going into the bye week, into the next game in prep, because bye weeks are huge now. Bye weeks are, if you want to change a team's attitude, if you want to change like the course of your season, bye weeks are huge. And I think it's coming. This game right here and our bye week is coming at a really good time.
So you've been in the position of these players where there was a lot of talk, would Zook continue the season? Would like when? And so it almost got to the point where it was when, not if, with Zook getting fired. What do you remember about being in that locker room, and how did you guys stay focused on the moment and block out that outside noise? Because it was incredibly loud that year.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny. We were going. It happened. I think he officially got let go after after we lost him at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
So after that happened, I mean, the emotions of losing such a beloved coach and all those things, you really, it wasn't announced, I think, until that Monday,
Mhm.
at Monday's practice. And I mean, we really lost a couple of days of practice because of the emotional toll it takes on a team. So you have to be really careful when you're the higher ups on the how and when.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really important. When I was on Will Muschamp's staff, I think that was a really big part of it too, as well as the how and when it happened, because you don't want to lose, especially in the game. I think we were going to play Georgia, and we were the number one offense in the SEC, and that losing those couple of days of practice just from an emotional toll hurt us in the game, especially early on. And so looking at it, I would, if you're going to make a change, a bye week is a great way to do it.
Mhm.
It seems inevitable right now, and just with all the noise and all the noise, Coach Zook used to call it the noise in the system,
Mhm.
and so there's a lot of it right now. Obviously, with us being 1-2, but like I said, there is a path to 3-2. I try to keep reminding people of that. There is a path to get beat 3-2 headed to Tennessee, and that's a team that will have a lot of confidence going on the road, which I think is another good game to go on the road to.
So, you said something that I think sometimes gets lost maybe in these conversations about should a coach be fired or should it not. And it is the emotional toll that it takes on a player. And I think from a fan perspective, it's easy to say, well, they didn't win enough games, so they need
Mm-hmm.
to be out. And they assume that because obviously the players there want to win, that they're going to be fully on board with getting a new coach. But it's certainly not that simple, right? You guys have an
Right.
emotional investment with the entire staff there. So what advice would you have for guys that are currently there if there is a coaching change that happens?
Yeah, it's you kind of it's tough. You have to take. I mean, it's almost like it's almost equivalent to the emotions you go through when you lose a loved one, right? You lose someone that's really close to you. There is a part in there, and everybody does it in a different way, where there's like a grieving, you know, period where you have to kind of have all the conversations with your family, with their families. You're pretty much saying goodbye to somebody that you've grown and built a relationship with over a long period of time. And just in life, that's tough to do, right? It's like somebody moving away to a different country or something like that. So it's tough. It can be tough and emotional toll, and it's even tougher to do when you have to go through that and you're trying to prepare for a Tennessee or a Georgia, and so it makes it even more tough because those days you can't lose days when you're preparing for teams that are that good. So, like I said, I think a lot of it is going to have to be on this senior group of players. Whether it's a players only meeting like we had, something's at the end of the day, the players are the ones that are on the field, right? And they're the ones that have to make the plays. The effort, the mental errors, those things can change right now. And it's just due to a different level of accountability that's held. And that's usually has to be held by your older group of guys, the guys who have had experience playing and in adversity situations. So
We appreciate Chris Leak so much for joining us for that interview, and we apologize for kind of the abrupt ending. We had a little bit of technical difficulties there at the end, but we hope to get Chris back on sometime soon because his insight really was interesting, and it was great to hear from somebody who has been in that position and also has been in this quarterback room over the spring. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Make sure you're subscribed to the page because we will have lots more content coming your way this week. As always, go Gators.